All right, you're going to be illustrating the circular flow map. I want you to draw this on your own paper. It's good practice and it's going to count as a daily grade in my class when it's completed. You're going to have to reproduce this on the test. You're going to have to know how to fill one of these in and illustrate it for the test. And keep in mind that the format of this is not absolute. You're going to see differences in various sources and different versions. Things might be labeled differently. So you're just going to have to be flexible enough to deal with that when it comes to doing the circular flow map. All right, so let's go ahead and get this started. You're going to need to draw this. You can stop this, pause it, back it up as needed. So if I'm going too fast, rewind, go back to where you need to be. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with households. Households are where individuals live, and they often control factors of production. This might be a farmer over here growing potatoes that might eventually be sold for French fries. Also, the people that live over here, they're the labor. So it's all about households holding factors of production, and the firms over here on the other side where the entrepreneurs are, they want to get their hands on these factors of production so they can produce goods and services. And there's two places where we need to look at and add to this. There's two things we need to look at. The first thing is a factor market, and the factor market is where the factors of production are going to flow from the households to the firms so that they can get their hands on FOPs and create goods or services. And then the product market is where you're going to see these goods and services developed from the factors of production and they're going to be sold to the households. So basically the households will sell their labor, their land, the factors of production to the firms through the factor market. And then the product market, once these things are turned into goods and services, the product market is where you will see these goods and services sold. And we're going to be dealing with physical flows and monetary flows, and you need to kind of pay attention to what's going to happen with these. First of all, you've got a physical flow from the households to the firms. It's factors of production going through the factor market to the firms, and it continues, from the illustration from one side to the other. It's the same on both sides, but there's a little bit of difference when you're looking at the monetary flow here. This is costs. This is money. The factors of production cost the firms money. They've got to buy these things. They've got to pay people for their labor. They've got to buy the resources, whether they're raw or refined resources, whatever. But the firms have got to buy the factors of production that are flowing from the households with money, and that's costs for the firms. And the households are getting paid, so it's still a monetary flow, but it transforms over on this side to income. This is where the households are going to make money so that they can buy goods and services. And someone might specialize in doing one job, and they might specialize in being a lawyer, and they get paid for being a lawyer. And with that money, they can buy hot tubs and sports cars or whatever because they've got income coming in. But physical flow, labor, effort, all those kind of things flow into the factor market, go to the firms. The firms pay for this. It's costs for them, and it's income in the households. And then the physical flows, when these things have transformed into goods and services, and they flow from the firms to the households. And you can pretty much see it's all the same right there. But in this situation, the households now have to pay for it. So these are consumption costs. This is the monetary flow becoming consumption. The households are paying for goods and services, and it becomes revenue for the firms at this point. So you have the monetary flow at the top going from costs to income, and at the bottom consumption to revenue. The firms make revenue, the households get income. Physical flow in the factor market stays the same. It's the transfer of factors production to the firms where they become goods and services, and they are selling the goods and services to the households. Then you can add the government to this. You might want to pause this at various points and back this up. Keep that in mind. But the government gets involved. It's right here in the middle. And some governments, maybe they should be illustrated larger in the center because they're more command or more socialist. Smaller might be representative of a more capitalist system. But a government's going to play a part in all economic systems. And what you're going to see from the government is they are going to take taxes from the households. And they actually will take factors of production. Some people work for the government and do not work in the private sector for firms. So you've got the government taking away, and the government's also taking away from the firms. Some goods and services are produced for government consumption. You can't go down to Walmart and get a thermal nuclear device from Walmart for personal use. And then the firms are going to pay taxes also. So the government's taking taxes from both the household and the firms Some of the FOPs are being directed to the government, and some of the goods and services are being directed to the government. So the government's taking, but it's also going to give back in the form of what we call expenditures. Welfare maybe for households, bailout money to firms like after 2008 when there was a collapse of the economy. There's all sorts of things that can be going on here, but the government spending money or giving money to households or firms, it comes in the form of expenditures. So factor market, product market. Factor market is where the factors of production go to the firms from the households to become goods and services. Product market is where they are sold to the households. You got the consumption revenue on the bottom and the cost income at the top. The government's got taxes coming in, and some goods and services are going to them, some factors of production, and then you have the expenditures going out to the households and the firms. So hopefully you got this. Back it up, like I said, if you need to. And you can see this graph at the bottom right here. It's not a very good circular flow diagram, but these are just little notes to follow up. Free markets are often shown in a circular flow diagram, and I think mine's a little bit better than this one. It's got goods market and factor market, so you can see how things are labeled differently. But this one without a key and stuff doesn't even really make that much sense. And so we've drawn one. It says on here time to draw. Yours will be more detailed. And then keep in mind that every market, the factor market or the product market or whatever name it's going by, is going to have a buyer and a seller. The buyer and the seller must take something to the market to exchange. Both the buyer and seller, after the exchange, take back with them what the other side brought to the marketplace. So on the factor market, who's the buyer? It's the businesses. Who's the seller? It's the households. What does the buyer bring to the market? Money, costs. What does the seller bring to the market? Resources, land, labor, capital, your factors of production. What does the buyer take from the market? The resources, land, labor, or capital. So one brings these in and the other one takes them. What does the seller take from the market? It's money, wages, rent, interest, whatever. Things are always going to be kind of slightly different from textbook to textbook. So, compare what we got going here to your drawing. Product market, who's the buyer? It's the households. Who's the seller? It's the businesses or firms. What does the buyer bring to the market? Income. What does the seller bring to the market? Goods and services. What is the buyer taking from the market? Goods and services. What is the seller taking from the market? Revenue, money. And the government in the flow, remember they're always taking the taxes. The government collects from both firms and households in order to operate. That's the revenue for the government. The government does buy some things. We've kind of established that. The government will also take some of the FOPs. There will be some factors of production that become government owned, some land, some of that kind of stuff. Some people will work for them. And then expenditures are any of the goods and services provided by the government, such as defense spending, building roads, and disability checks. So there you have it in about 8 minutes or so what's going on with this. Re-listen to it, draw that, know it.